We are live.
Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Audit and Risk Committee meeting. We'll kick off with a karakia. Haki roto, haki waho, kia tau te maure e, ko kiri nei, ina piki, ina hiki, ko te rangi mari e tātou. I rapu nei, ti hei, mauri ora. Just before we kick off this meeting, we do have the exact number of members here to make the quorum. So Kevin, Andrew, and Alexa, and myself. So we will have to stay in the room. Okay. So if any of us wants to leave, we'll have to adjourn the meeting just for a few minutes. But having said that, no, we're all good to kick off. So just looking at our agenda. We have apologies from Gretchen that we've received. I'm not aware of any others at this stage.
And Gary Kelleher.
Gary Kelleher.
And Kate Wilson.
Okay, thanks. We'll note those. And Andrew Noon's in there having his lunch still. I think he may come in.
He's decided to come out.
Oh, he's here. Oh, he's here. Okay, he just slipped in. Yeah, right. Okay. So we don't have a public forum. So just a confirmation of the agenda. There's nothing there to be added as far as I'm aware of. So we'll just stick with what we've got. Declaration of interest, once again, to remind you of that. We don't have any presentations. We can roll on to the confirmation of minutes from the last meeting. So for those that were there, are there anything in these minutes that need correcting, or are they trying to
Yes, okay.
Second. Kevin, Andrew, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Passed. Thank you. Well, against? None. It's carried. Okay, just some actions from that that meeting I think are being covered in today's meeting. So we have got some discussion around the internal audit in a paper, so that is good. Right, we're rolling on to the Audit and Risk Work Programme for 2024. Nick, are you going to take us through that, or is it something, I know we have to just note it, but is there anything there that you need to cover?
I'll highlight a couple of key things about it. It's largely the same as last year. So if you remember, beginning of last year, we put the work program in. We did modify it slightly towards the end of the year. There was some changes that were made, and we did it in September just to reflect. I think that we just decided that some of the structure of some of the reports, because reports either come to every meeting of this committee, or some are only once a year, and there are some that are twice a year. So we restructured a few of those, like the policy one dropped down to once a year. So this reflects what got changed towards the end of last year. Only thing that has been changed is the policy one, which was initially planned to come to the first meeting of each calendar year. Just for this year, we've moved it to the second meeting because Janet, who looks after that, has been away. So it suited better if she could prepare that one for the next one. It's an annual report, so not time critical. Rest of them are there. The green highlights meetings that item will definitely go to. Yellow just indicates that that item could be on the agenda depending on what might come up. The structure of obviously the Audit and Risk Subcommittee meetings is that they follow 1 month after Finance Committee. So the idea there is that Finance Committee, when it meets, if it has any matters that it wants to dive deeper into, it could refer them to Audit and Risk, because there's a month there to have a look. So it gives a couple of weeks to maybe provide more info, and then Audit and Risk to consider anything extra. And the only other one that I'd put there is where I've got a note on that is the investment manager. I've got a wee, and that's down to be looked at in December. So typically this committee would look at the performance of the managed fund in a little bit more detail at the end of every year anyway. But this December will mark 6 years of JB Ware managing the fund. They were appointed in late 2018, so the fund transferred to them on 1 January 2019. So on a 3-yearly cycle, I've indicated there that we'll look to get an independent review of how the fund has performed, and Audit and Risk can consider that at the end of the year, and then it's a decision as to whether Audit and Risk wishes to just say, yeah, that's fine, and we'll roll effectively another period with JB Ware, or whether there's a desire to look at going to market or any other actions Audit and Risk might want.
Yeah. Okay, just a note that our June meeting, we've got quite a lot to cover based on this work plan. So just an observation. Excellent. Right, I think we're moving to our people and safety report.
Yes. Do you want to? We need to move
I
that.
missed something else.
Questions?
Questions around Audit and Risk work program.
Cool.
Yep. Go for it, Andrew.
Yeah, I guess just off the does it have to be read or not? It has to be on read, yeah. I guess, yeah, just to point on the JB Ware, I just certainly noticed in the media in the last week that they're going through a large merger of a number of those fund managers at the moment, which JB Ware is one. So that was in the public eye. So no, I don't think that should sort of affect too much, but we may see some change in the name. Which is just something to note. And then, yeah, so the work plan looks good. I think we've made some good progress over the years with it. I certainly know we're just very keen. Some of the lines where we sort of do them as required, sort of throughout the year, just to make sure, I always sort of have my eye on it to make sure we do it at least once throughout the year. For example, whether it's the business continuity and disaster recovery, so to make sure we do actually sort of have that in the agenda at least once throughout the year. Otherwise, some of these things can get missed. But yeah, no.
Thank you.
Happy to move.
Kevin moved. Second, Alexa. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Okay, that's noted. Okay, this time.
Health and safety.
People and safety report. Yep. So Gina, Mark, Kelly, Amanda. So yeah, we're in your hands.
Hi everyone. So in terms of people and safety, we've had a busy and productive start to the year in the health, safety and wellbeing space. The team have responded really well to a couple of issues raised by the Health and Safety Committee. One to do with safety of our staff working in the road corridor, and the other one in terms of exposure of staff working out in the sun. Both cases, they weren't part of our work program, but we've adapted our plans accordingly. And the roadside traffic management one's a really good opportunity for us to collaborate with staff, with external support and development and implementation of controls that are both robust and practical. In the people and culture side, we're encouraged that staff turnover is continuing to decline, down to 16.6% for permanent and fixed term staff, and now 13.1% for permanent staff. So we would hope and expect to see further improvement on those. There has been a high volume of recruitment activity, which adds to workload in terms of employment documentation and onboarding. And we've been really encouraged with the response rate we've been getting across our advertising. And both teams have a full work program ahead of projects and initiatives we'll be working on alongside our core service delivery. We're looking forward to sharing our people and culture strategy and health and safety and wellbeing strategy with ELT beginning of April. And over to questions.
Kevin?
Yeah, really good report, and it's given us, I think it's given me a really clear picture, so well done. Just on page 15, and this is under our summary of critical risks. Just flip back to that page. And it is page 15, I think it is. Yeah, page 15. And you've got mental health, moderate, then you've got mental health strategy to be developed. So where are we at with that?
Sorry, I'm just matching my pages.
Oh, sorry.
But basically with the mental health strategy, what we're doing with that is working into our strategy and our work program with the aim to start developing that this year. So it'll be quite an involved piece with a lot of consultation required with staff. So not yet in place, but certainly there's supports available for staff for mental health that we have that will feature eventually in the strategy.
So I suppose that it's to be developed. It'd be quite good to have a time frame somewhere to report it to us that your progress is being made or something. Just so we've got a date. It sort of and I might have missed that, but I just
We can certainly.
I'm very happy with what you're doing, and every time we've asked a question around mental health, there's been good supports and that in place. But I just just to know where you're heading with that would be really good, Jen.
I think we could take that into control development, just tease it out a little bit so you can see.
Lovely.
The visibility.
Thank you.
Nice. Just one of the things I noticed was the duress procedures around whare runaka, and I was just sort of wondering what that was.
Yep, so that is in line with developing what level of security type technology that we have in place. So in that aspect, we're really thinking, we're thinking around what our desired duress procedures would look like. So we know what works really well in this building. So it's envisioning what procedure that we want to have in place, and then ensuring when that's being designed that we've got adequate technology designed into that plan.
Okay.
So it's certainly high level at this stage and may be adjusted a little bit when we're in the building itself, but gives us a bit of a high level direction to get in.
Actually, one of the other, Andrew, you go for it.
Thanks for another great report. Just very keen to pick up on your point around the people and culture strategy, which is sort of being developed at the moment. Just sort of keen to hear what it involves at a high level in terms of what's in it, and keen to know if that includes a piece around performance management, staff management, staff performance management piece.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll keep it super high level. It hasn't gone to LT yet, but essentially it's articulates our desired future state for OIC, what type of workplace and culture we want to have, and there's 6 key people aspirations with key focus areas, projects and initiatives that will take us to where we need to be, that we'll execute over the next 3 years. And one of the 6 aspirations is enabling high performance, and that's where we have the high emphasis around performance planning, review, that we're having, all our people are having one-to-ones with their people leader, and that they're effective and impactful, that our practices around remuneration and recognition are hitting the mark, and so certainly that's factored in. Is there anything I missed from your question?
No, that certainly covers it. I'd just say if it's possible, once it is all finalised internally, for us to get if it was a high level summary or the actual document or a one pager of it, would be fantastic to see.
Yes, go for it.
Thank you. I've got a couple of comments and a question. My first one is just relating to you got in your incidents, one related to a landowner aggression over the telephone, which sort of concerns me a little bit that a landowner can, get that aggressive that it gets reported basically. So probably, I suppose my comment there is, if it gets too bad, it's not up to you, it's up to our guys to deal with the public if it's over. I was wondering what it was over to start with, if that was nothing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt. Like myself, I don't mind stepping into some people that are a bit difficult to need that goes beyond what staff should put up with. So I'm not too sure what that is. Was it just about rates or something? Do you know what it was about?
So I believe this one was in response to a consenting activity.
Yeah.
But I have to look back at the record specifically to ensure
Yeah.
that.
No, that's fine.
I used too much for the batteries. Here we go. So we have a number of these, and they do appear on these reports. Not on a reasonably consistent basis. It's something that, as local government, I know all councils face some of this, and we just need to, and we do make sure that our staff have got the tools to deal with it. Unfortunately, while I'd like to think it wasn't just part of the job, as a council and as a regulator, unfortunately it is. And appreciate your point, Lloyd, and know that you've put your hand up before to make some of those calls, and I know other councillors do as well. Some of them have to be made by staff because of the regulatory function that we undertake, and it's just about us giving them the right tools to make sure they feel safe and supported at work. But in an ideal world, as we continue to build better relationships and better understanding of what we do, we'll see less of them. And in the meantime, it's about having the right tools and reporting it in the right way so we're aware of it. Then there are other things like LTP and rates, things where absolutely, we know that councillors are available to have those conversations, and our CX team can refer them on.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Awesome. And my next point was that I was pretty enheartened, the training and development section in the report is really good, that there's a lot of activity going on right around the business. So it's, it's really broad. And my question was, I've got it highlighted here that the Target Regional Council bought 1,833 kilometres for their team. And I was wondering how many people in the team.
Yeah, so our challenge this year had quite a low number of staff actually participating. So it was around 22 staff.
Oh.
So it's a really significant achievement for that number. I remember looking back at, about midway through the challenge, and we'd had one staff member who had biked the distance to Christchurch. About halfway through February. They're pretty impressive.
Is it, how long did the challenge go?
Just for the month of February.
1 month. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And probably the last thing is really good, like it was already picked up around the workforce snapshot, that it looks like we're getting people. It's really encouraging to see people applying for our jobs. And if you got I think it was average of 16 per role, 16. Like that's, to me, that's like a big turnaround. And to me, it's an indication that we're seen as an employment opportunity, which is really good. And that's all part of the culture that getting built. So just congratulations for that as well.
It's somewhat reflective of the market too, that it is the job ads are down and applications are up, but we're benefiting from it, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, all good.
Good dose of pragmatism. Kevin.
I've got one more on that report, if that's possible. On page 25, where we go into our risks, you've got to note we've had 63 contractor-related incidents in the past 2 years. So, to me, what could you give us an idea of the number to get that 63? The number of contractors we're actually dealing with?
Yeah. So we have a really significant contractor number. I wouldn't know a strong number off the top of my head, but I can tell you that the incident numbers that we see reflected here are from our major contracts that we have in place, which is including things like bus operations, which a large proportion come from And then our other key projects like the Wilding Pine, the work with the Wallabies. Contractor work with our smaller contractors, so, bespoke, maybe one-off or, quarterly throughout the year is really low in terms of, incident frequency, if that's helpful.
Yeah, so what we're saying is it's proportional to there's no great concern for us there because of the high number that we. Yeah. Just sort of at some stage it'd probably be quite good to get some sort of concept on that, because I suppose we've got more than, I know there's no bus drivers in Oamaru, but there's a lot down here, and that's part of it. How many times have I said that today?
The other thing I'll just add to that, and it is a lot of it's to do with the nature of the work, as Gemma outlined. It's while we need to be concerned and have a close eye on it, it's also a positive the fact they're reporting.
Oh, absolutely.
And it shows that the processes and the relationships with those contract managers have been, well built. And that we've got that process to enable us to capture the data. So better to have the data so we know what we're dealing with and can make some plans than the alternative, which can happen if the relationship and the processes aren't there. So it's good, big effort by Gina and the team, and also the teams who manage the contracts on the ground to have that in place. But certainly take your point, Kevin, that it's a high number when you look at it like that. And so we just need to make sure we're keeping an eye on it.
I just put the front page of the paper test on it, that 63 incidents to some people would be absolutely huge, but if we can report at some stage gets a bearing of the percentage that is. Don't go to too much, but conceptually right, but good. Thank you.
Just to follow on from that question and looking at the incident near miss dashboard. I think, is that what you're referring to, Kevin? 66 recorded incidents. Anyway, so
That's the incident dashboard.
that's the incident dashboard. Okay, so it's separate. But just looking at that dashboard, and you have listed your critical risks as well. How many of the incidents of those 66 incidents were related around those critical risks that you have? Is that something you can answer?
So that one reflects to number of incidents by type, which is over the page from that area. I haven't denoted the specific amount in that quarter within the critical risk profiles.
Right.
But looking at this graph here, we can see a bit of an overview of that timeframe snapshot. But in future could
It would be
include those
helpful,
specifics.
we've identified what those critical risks are. It would be really useful to measure the decrease in the number of recorded incidents on that basis. But just once again, looking at the incidents in the MS dashboard, is there anything there that strikes you as being something we should be aware of at this level, Council?
Our incident near-miss dashboard for this quarter is actually quite proportionately lower than what we would generally get. So I think we're at a really quite a stable level with our safety and wellbeing performance, and I think really maturing our systems that we have in place. No concerns that I would highlight.
That's good. Are there any further questions around?
Happy to know. Happy to know.
No. Second, so Kevin moved, seconded Alexa. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Next, it's carried. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good report, thank you.
Get in this one. Get in the drive in this one.
So Nick, we move on to the Treasury report. If you want to take us through that.
Yep, so the Treasury report, just part of it, this is the Treasury report focused on our debt. So Bancorp prepare a quarterly report, just outlines compliance with our Treasury policy. So there's no issues there. If you go through and have a look at their report, it's outlined it's on page 36, has a summary, and then there's the interest rate risk management on page 37, and they note that we're compliant. The only thing that I'd note there is, so this is around our core debt that we've got, 25 million. We exclude the port because they operate under their own covenants. But if you look at that graph on page 37, on the one on the top left-hand corner, so it's sort of shaded in grey, it has the red lines that sort of step down sort of in tiers, and it has one at the top and one at the bottom. And then the dark blue shaded is where our debt is actually sitting. So our debt needs to sit within those two lines. This is our for our ones that so that we've got our interest rate cover. So what we've got fixed. So we're looking at the fixed portion of our debt. And as you can see, just the first step where it steps down in December 25, we're inching closer to that. So I make the note in the paper that over this next, it's actually now sort of between now and over the next month, we'll look to put some interest rate swaps in place so that we've got that hedged, so that we will remain compliant with our with the Treasury policy. Yep. Which has a minimum amount that we have to maintain as fixed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just trying to understand that a bit further. So because in the agreement or contract, there's a minimum amount of debt. There's a minimum amount of debt that we must hold for at a certain interests that we're sort of contractually obliged to. That's how it works.
What we've got to do is maintain a minimum portion percentage of our total portfolio must be fixed for, you can see there, for between 0 to 2 years, 2 to 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where we're getting to. We're getting to the point that we'll drop into that 0 to 2 will drop below that 40% minimum.
Yeah.
Yep. So then we'll need to make sure that we put a swap in place, because that'll bring that interest cover back up. But where interest rates are going, that you can see the way we structured the portfolio when we took it out was our fixed portion. We were right at the minimums because we didn't want to push out any further because interest rates were high but forecast to be coming down. So again, we'll look to put some shorter term swaps in place with the hope that, then as they start rolling off, we'll continue to drive the overall cost of our debt down.
So how effective is this in terms of, if we've got a minimum level of debt, do we still have to fit within the bands on this graph?
These, I think, these only count if our core debt is above, and I can't remember whether it's 10 or 15 million.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we're down below that, then we don't have to, it's not really economic or efficient to put swaps and maintain it in tranches. So I can't remember the exact number, but it's either 10 or 15.
And our debt's 25.
Oh, is it?
I don't know.
No. Our current level is 25.
Yeah.
But the rules around what we have to comply with around minimum levels that must be fixed for the time periods only applies if our core debt is above a minimum level. And like I said, it's either 10 or 15 million. So that if we were just operating with effectively, working capital debt that was managed through an overdraft, we wouldn't have to worry any of this.
And do you remind me, is this a risk management technique, or is it a contractual obligation with our? It's an interest risk management policy that's in our treasury management policy. Yeah.
There's no requirement for this with the LGA, LGFA. Right.
And Lexi, you're correct. Our core debt is 25 million.
Yeah.
That's somewhere.
We're sitting at the moment. So anything else to point out there, Nick, in this report? Is that it? Okay, just take it as Okay, so the recommendations we note the report. So
Remove.
Andrew, thank you. Alexa, thank you for the seconds.
Since I know
All
what
those in
it is.
favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes. That's carried. Thank you. Right, our deep dive slot. So we've got Kate, Andrea, and Andrew. So we're looking at community engagement today, and this is a part of all our audit meetings as we go through. We'll have a deep dive. So hand over to you.
Kia ora tātou. I'll just, Kia ora tātou. I'll just introduce Kate Pettit mainly for Andrew's purpose because I don't think you would have met her. Kate started last August as our senior advisor for strategic engagement. So I'll hand over to Kate.
Hi there, nice to meet you, Andrew. So this report, I mean, the nature of strategic risk and community engagement is fairly perpetual, considering the current landscape shaped by community expectations and regulatory factors. It amplifies this risk for the council. To mitigate these challenges, ORC has implemented several proactive measures. These include allocating additional resources to engagement efforts, establishing a robust community engagement framework, which is due first draft with ELT on 18th of April, prioritising diverse and inclusive engagement practices and enhancing organisational capacity and capability. These initiatives outlined in the risk prevention improvement plan have successfully reduced the residual risk rating to medium, and specific actions taken to implement the Hi Mahi Raurika through the community engagement framework, is the kind of the first start in implementing that kind of wider piece of work and extensive planning around building the capacity and capability within the organisation.
Kate, would you mind just moving the microphone a bit closer to yourself?
Sorry.
Thank you. Didn't mean to interrupt. Here we go.
I'd actually finished. Would you like me to say it again? Did everyone hear, or do you want me to go over it?
You're on, Andrew. That one's like you. I know you'll be right.
Thank you.
Through.
Everything very clearly. Thank you.
Got subject to an in joke there, sorry about
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
All right. Any questions regarding?
Well, you've got quite a detailed report here.
Yep.
On our risk environment and various other things. Could you just take us through some of the key points of this report?
Sure.
Please.
I think the first thing is really around the kind of community expectation, not just in New Zealand, but around that kind of expectation for transparent engagement practices. And as well, that combined with the legislative environment that the regional council sits in, it really builds a picture that we have to uplift community engagement practices to, kind of an organizational approach. I think one of the, I think what we've identified and, where the gap is that there's some really good engagement happening across council and all the different teams, but there isn't kind of a cohesive approach to that. And so, there's kind of gaps in terms of planning and that evaluation and feedback loops. And so what this kind of work programming looks at doing is providing, an organizational framework that sits across council that will bring that kind of cohesive and coordinated approach to engagement, where we kind of where we're embedding Hi Mahi Raurika and a bunch of other kind of legislative requirements, but also kind of community values alongside that and other aspects of council work programming, and building from that framework a whole bunch of different kind of suite of resources, which will enable the enhancement of capability and capacity across ORC staffing. And that, there's many things that kind of sit within that. And the other thing, there's methods matrix and targeted inclusive engagement staff. So, you know, there'll be lots of different resources that will help to pull up that capability.
So at the moment, we're about to consult on long-term plan. Now that fits within this community engagement, I take it?
We will certainly, if the framework is approved by ALT, there'll certainly be elements of the framework that will feed into that. But that engagement at the moment, there's sort of key stakeholder engagement. Not sure. The timing is difficult. It depends. There will be resources built that will be able to feed in and support that process. But I'm not sure the resources will be in a finalized product to be able to fully.
So what would it look like if it's working according to your plan? What would the community engagement on our long-term plan look like?
I'll just jump in a little bit, but I think Kate will be able to give another example of a different project. So that for the LTP, my understanding is that there is a separate engagement plan for that, and it's been run separately just in terms of timing. So those two things over time will mesh together, but the LTP project has an engagement plan and that was developed at the end of last year, which I think you guys approved. Richard might have further information.
Yeah, so the short answer to your question, Tim, is I think that there is lots that will happen in the long-term plan engagement process. You will see once the framework rolls out, it's not going to be entirely different. What the framework will do is enable some consistency across the way in which we engage, rather than have slightly different approaches depending on which team is running it, whether it's LTP or a infrastructure project or regulatory, whatever it might be. So the LTP was developed in isolation of the framework because of timing, and that was done last year by the same company that ran the land and water plan engagement process. It has been signed off, and that's what's been rolled out in next month. But I would expect to see many of the same things appear when ELT approve the ORC framework, and then that framework will be used for all of our engagements. So we'll start to see some consistency, which is the one thing we continue to hear about from community and stakeholders, is just around being consistent in terms of what they can expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Alexa.
I'm really pleased to see this. It's something that comes up often in our council meetings, and we can spend a lot of time, and we probably spend a lot of money on trying to get across this. And I really like your delineation between communication and engagement, and it's both have their issues, but engagement is often what we're seeking to do, but communication, I guess my question to you is, can you further give us an example of communication versus an example of engagement, just so I'm not saying that mine is correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose an example of communication where we're delivering messages is kind of through our newsletters, for example. So we're updating community on pieces of work that we are doing. We're not necessarily asking for feedback on that newsletter or any reciprocal dialogue that comes with that. And then when we're talking about engagement, we're looking to create an environment where we're encouraging and eliciting that kind of conversation. So there's two-way dialogue. So we're asking community and stakeholders to give their to share their perspectives, their understanding, their values with us, so that we are able to use that information to influence, impact, take into consideration for any work that we go and do.
So to take that a step further, comms would be absolutely vital in terms of an emergency, for example, whereas engagement really helps us set long-term policy that the community will agree to fund. Would that be fair?
Yes.
Thanks for a great paper. I can certainly understand the enormity of the challenge that we've got in terms of engaging, both in terms of all the different departments and staff and contractors who are involved in a suite of work, and then the variety of it too, from an LTP to catchment work to smaller pieces of work. So sort of thinking through all of that, there'll be sort of different levels of engagement depending on what it is. So, and I'm sort of asking the question also because you could spend a lot of time, effort and money doing that. And so getting that balance right is key. Actually, sometimes saying we need to do so much, but so in this new framework, will there be guidance for staff around that in terms of what level of engagement and sort of something to work to?
Yes, so in the Hi Mahi Raurika, we commit to using the IAP to the International Association of Public Participation Spectrum, which talks about the kind of level of engagement you're looking for from an inform all the way up to an empower. And so what the framework does, what the resources do, is help staff members to kind of tease that out a little bit more, to understand the impact on communities and the influence that communities have, to build an understanding about what level of communication is necessary. And then from that starting point, during your kind of discovery stage, you know, when you decide you're going to engage, that's the starting point and you go from there. So that really eliminates the risk of people going too far or not going far enough right from the beginning.
Yeah, certainly just hearing those words of, yes, are you there just to inform them or to empower? Yeah, I can immediately see that there'll be steps here. Okay.
Kevin,
Where do we measure the effectiveness of this engagement?
So the evaluation, I mean, monitoring and evaluation of engagement is a really complex one, and it's what the framework and the associating resources will do is really try to break that down and provide tools and resources to break that down into quite a simple form. And so there's lots of different elements of evaluation. And so I don't want to speak because nothing's been showed to ELT or been agreed yet, but we're hopefully going to have sort of a bit of an audit tool, which is a kind of organizational standard, which looks at a multitude of different things. And then the evaluation on project by project, we will look at lots of different elements, and there'll be guiding resources around the process, the outcome and the impact of engagement. And so evaluating it in those three ways.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that model. Interesting to see that model because we've had, for instance, on our land and water plan where we got sort of 500 to 600 responses that were generally very good responses. So I was actually quite happy with that. Whereas some around the table would say, well, that's, you know, out of the whole of Otago, that's all we got. Well, you know, we should have had thousands sort of thing. So again, that's a mix between the quality and quantity, and did we effectively engage with the other people, and we've engaged with them really well to show them what's on our land and water plan, so they actually didn't have to reply to us. So it would be I'm really interested to see that once you've got it developed.
Yeah, if I could add to that point as well, I think that's where the cost question comes in as well, because perhaps to get, you know, a couple of thousand responses, you might have needed to spend another X amount of dollars, which wasn't where that project was at. So that comes into that evaluation piece too.
And I'll just add my 2 cents worth too. Also linking it to other existing mechanisms. So the community what's it called? The community satisfaction survey. So we should be able to see, you know, some sort of impact in the results of those if we're improving the way in which we engage. So that's another mechanism that already exists that should have a correlation between the effort and the activity that we put in.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
I've got a couple of things here. I mean, first of all, with your empowerment, which is a great way of thinking about engagement, really. You said that, Tim. But with empowerment, we got to be careful that empowerment is coming from an informed position. So it can't just be empowering ill-informed voices. It's pretty pointless and pretty dangerous and difficult. We'll see what happens with that. So I guess have you got some thinking around there you can share?
Yeah, I think it's all about being transparent. It's about setting, you know, I think you're absolutely right. I think when we go into that empowerment space where we're really saying community kind of are almost the sort of final decision makers. It's very rare that actually councils move into that space. But certainly, you know, the processes and the steps to go through in planning engagement, there's a huge amount of value and weight in the resources and in international best practice placed on setting your negotiables, your non-negotiables, and being really clear and transparent about actually what is community and stakeholders, what are they able to influence, what aspects, and really delineating those parameters so that people don't get confused and then feel actually, you know.
And some key stakeholder stuff, I suppose, where key stakeholders have more of a chance to perhaps allow themselves to, or even subject them. I don't mean key stakeholders in terms of people with an interest.
Yeah.
I mean, key people somehow or another engaged that want to have engagement and are willing to consider things from a variety of angles. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I know I'm going with the next question. Before you raised your eyebrow, Kevin. The next one was about
It's a really good explanation.
there must be implications of from the falling engagement with mainstream media and local news media. We probably don't see that too highly in Otago. We've got a strong local newspaper, but certainly as we're seeing media organisations like Newshub fall off the radar, that's pretty tricky. And so there's implications of that. And there's also implications of the dominant culture not involving with the many cultures that we now have in our region. And an example of that would we think about as a council engaging with an extremely strong Filipino group in Queenstown that probably don't even know of our existence, except from their rates bill, which they wouldn't receive because none of them own a house, or very few. I don't any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's lots of parts of the demographic of Otago where, you know, just kind of fall off the radar, and not intentionally, but they might not know about our work. And if they do know about our, you know, what we're doing and what we're engaging on, they're potentially choosing not to. So it's about developing mechanisms and processes, and whether that be memorandums of understanding, building good relationships with organisations and community leaders, to enable, to broaden that reach of engagement. And one of the resources will be a guide to inclusive engagement that will be very Otago specific. And then we're also developing like a register of, you know, different contacts, different organisations, different people that allow us to make sure that we are diversifying in our engagement, and we are making sure that engagement lands with everybody.
So that would be just lastly, that would be thinking about the social infrastructure of any particular town or region. So stakeholders come from those people.
Yeah, that's
instead of people who have vested interests. Yeah, just took me a while to get there. Thanks. That's
we
what I've
agree.
got to say at
We
the moment.
agreed.
Thanks, Alexa.
I was just going to say that's where the integrated catchment planning and having that context and the sort of the aspirations and the vision of that community will also help with engagement. And I was also just going to put a cheeky plug in for that when the engagement framework comes back, that like anything, there'll be a trade-off between that easy engagement versus more effective engagement that you're alluding to, but there's obviously an investment, a different investment option around all of those, and I guess our job is to identify the pros and cons and some of the costs of doing that more effective and diverse engagement, because it does come at an increased cost from the sort of traditional easy engagement.
It looks like it's expensive by looking at your report here, that there's got to be some big changes.
Not always.
No, I
So
think
you can do things differently with the same resources to get a different outcome.
it's about creating the right support for people to understand, and then it's about creating the right relationships and networking to that we could reach out to and leverage off what already exists.
Social infrastructure.
What do you need us to do, Tim? I've got no more questions.
No, just a question on that one is the effectiveness of this framework. How will it be measured? The last community satisfaction survey, I think we had 1,100 responses. So would a measure be, for instance, that we target to get 1,600 responses? Or how do we know that we're doing well with this framework?
We rang 1,100 people.
Just for context, I understand the question,
Yeah.
just to put everyone's mind at ease in terms of comparison to the community survey. The community survey is a set number that we contract a provider to contact. I think a better example might be LTP if we get 300. But it's the quality versus quantity conversation as well. So maybe if Kate, I suppose the question I think from Tim, putting the community survey aside, is how would we monitor the effectiveness of this framework?
Yeah. It has to be monitored in a number of different ways. So there'll be an organizational uplift in capacity and capability. So that will come from sort of within. People will feel more confident about community engagement using those resources. There will be some consistency and a cohesive approach, hopefully, to engagement that's coming out of Otago Regional Council, where there's a sort of an evidence culture of inclusive engagement practices that will be able to kind of shine through in a lot of the engagement strategies and reports. I think perception is a huge one. So the way that we engage through our community survey and some of the evaluation processes that will happen after engagement will shine a light on public perception of how we've engaged. And so, there is a multitude, it's not just a one frame, there's not just one question that we need to ask, there's a multitude of different ways, and they'll all filter in to kind of give an idea that this is working. We're also hoping to, in the process of developing like an audit tool for the organisation that looks at community engagement as a whole. Like I said, it sets organisational standards that are in line with international best practice. The commitments that we've made to engage in Hi Mahi Raurika and legislative requirements. So that will be a kind of an overarching tool that will allow us to audit our engagement, and then there will be larger evaluation processes for each engagement project.
Thank you. I didn't want it to be a complicated question, but I think that was right. Good interpretation. Thank you. If we haven't got any further questions on this, then we've got screen notes here. You'll see them. Got someone happy to move all three.
Yep, I'll move all three.
Thank you, Alexa. Seconder. Kevin, thank you. Is everyone clear on those notes? Okay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Thank you very much, Kate. Andrea, I sometimes want to say Andrea. Is it Andrea or Andrea?
I mean, if we're feeling fancy, that's all.
Okay.
It's normally Andrea.
Andrea.
Or Amanda, either one.
Right, yeah.
Or Amanda.
All right, rolling on to our internal audit paper. Should I think that's your one, is it?
That's fine, yeah, with some support from Andrew. So this has been on the action list for a while. It does require us to have commenced this internal audit process within this financial year. So we're looking to get that underway. The paper just sets out a little bit about what an internal audit program is and what it does for the OSC. I won't go through all of that. I thought what I would cover off is why we are recommending asset management. So there's a couple of reasons. The first one is related to the issues post cyclone in the North Island at the beginning of last year, and even going back to previous natural disasters in the North Island. And what's come out of that is the critical role that asset management plays in should council be required to defend its position in terms of the failure of infrastructure to do its job, if you like. And that is a work risk that regional councils are really focused on. And I think that points us towards asset management as being a good first port of call. The second reason is that there are a number of teams in the organisation at the moment looking at asset management systems and updating them, bringing in new systems to better able to manage assets, whether it be our engineering team, our environmental monitoring team. There's a number of teams that hold assets that do need to be recorded, and then we do need to make sure we've got a maintenance program for them. So in light of that work happening and them starting to think about how they might create a tender or process to select an asset management provider, this type of audit would provide a lot of useful information and direction for them when they undertake that process as well. So those are the two reasons we've selected this. There's any number of topics that could form part of an internal audit process, and you'll see those in the attachment there. But that's the reason that I've recommended asset management as our first cab off the rank for the internal audit program. And then we would just look to run it as a it's an ongoing part of OSC's business to continue that internal audit function, continue reporting those back to this committee.
Take questions.
Anything to add, Andrew?
No, I
just saw you read light on.
Yeah. I'll say something. But just to ask the question, just to make sure the ball keeps moving. Do you think we could at least engage somebody before the next committee meeting, even if the work hasn't actually started, just to make sure?
Need to be underway. So intention would be if we got this agreement from the committee that's a good place to start, then we would go out and commence that piece of work. Obviously, there's a additional recommendation there requesting that we do develop that longer term audit program just for visibility. That would give this committee, an ongoing program of work that will continue to report through, but that would be done in parallel with getting the asset management audit underway.
Okay. Sounds good.
Kevin.
So you're saying we need to get someone external to do this?
So that's, we would get an independent, and there are examples of councils that have their own internal audit function, where they've got staff to do it. We don't have that function. And certainly to start with, I wouldn't be proposing that we go out and hire people until we understand what this program might look like.
Ongoing.
And there are some benefits in having independent parties come in and undertake these. So you get the right expertise depending on the topic that you're looking to undertake that audit. So certainly it would be an external party to start with, and it could be revisited in the future, but my expectation is certainly initially this would be undertaken by an external party.
Look, I'm comfortable with that, but it would be really quite good that procedure of the internal audit was then entrenched in people's heads that they were always referring to. That's the way we do it. So it changes. So we pick up something in an internal audit that we should be doing, that then all of a sudden we're monitoring that process is then carrying on. So I mean that's operational.
It is. I mean, I guess the comparison, or the most easy comparison at the moment is the efficiency review, which came out with a number of actions that we're then required to report back on in terms of implementation. I see a similar process through this committee in terms of monitoring the actions that come out of the internal audits and demonstrating to the committee that we have undertaken those actions. So whether it be implementing them into process, or whether they're one-off actions, there'll be a number of things that come out, and part of the checks and balances that this committee would be interested in are monitoring that we have ticked off those actions that come out of the audit.
Great, thank you.
For you, Tim. So certainly my perspective from an audit and risk committee, and as us as members of it sitting around, a lot of the time we ask management prepare a paper for us and present and tell us their view on the state of the organisation, and then from an audit risk committee point of view, then we have to go and seek independent assurance from other parties. Deloitte being one that we do get every year, and it's always booked in, and that's particularly around the financials. And then essentially it is up to us as a committee to identify the other risk areas within the organisation, and we can then request an independent internal audit of that area. So us as members can absolutely feed into that internal audit program, usually through the risk register, which will be highlighting what we think are the risks. But it's just another tool for us to get a comfort over what's happening.
I'm happy to move if there's no more questions, and I just think it's actually quite an exciting process, especially after doing that question, the effectiveness review. I think this is the next step of just bringing greater strength to the IRC, really. So, you know, I'm pretty excited about it, really. If I'm allowed to be excited about audit and risk. But happy to move all three.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. Is there any,
Yeah, I'll second.
did you, were you?
Just a quick comment, I think working in around the asset management, I think that's an awesome place to start as well, because it's probably one of our biggest risk centres.
Yeah.
That's been highlighted since the storms up north, so it'd be really good to get program underway, and so that we can mitigate and make sure that we're on firm ground.
Thank you. Okay, moved by Kevin, seconded by Andrew. Thank you. So we'll take all those three recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? And it's carried. All right, we've got a resolution to exclude the public, so that we're going into a public excluded section of this meeting.
Happy to move so.
Thank you, Kieran. And,
Second.
Andrew seconded. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Right, approved.
Okay. I'm turning off the feed and sound now.